What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Comixly Podcast, the official podcast of Comixly.com. My name is Joseph, and this is episode number 23. On the program today, Angela and I are going to be discussing the first half of the K-drama Itaewon class. This is a K-drama you can find on Netflix. It just has one season on Netflix right now. There's 16 total episodes. We're going to be discussing episodes 1 through 8 today. We could also call this episode the episode where Angela convinces Joseph that K-dramas are good. And yeah, this is a really fun episode because Angela's been talking about this for a while and wanting to do this one. So there's a lot of energy, right? She's sort of walking me through it, some of the conventions, some of the things to expect, just because this is a type of show that she's been really getting into. So she was excited to talk about it, and I think this is a good example of one, right? Or, I've read a couple of views talking about how this is sort of an interesting K-drama that breaks the mold a little bit, but is also a really good representation of K-dramas as a whole. So yeah, hope you enjoy it. Again, we're just talking about the first half of the season today, so episodes 1 through 8. Again, you can find that on Netflix, and I won't take up too much more of your time because we kind of go on this one. So we'll be back with our discussion of episodes 1 through 8 of Itaewon class after this short break. Da, 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 da. I feel like we're thinking of different songs.
I'm thinking of the song from the drama.
The one that we like?
Yeah.
Oh, that doesn't really sound like it, though. What are you moving around on your desk?
I mean, the desk to make it more comfortable. I'm doing it now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we're not going to start with singing because, I can't sing. You're fine, but I can't sing. So maybe we shouldn't start with that. Yeah, very boring. But we are going to we're talking about a K-drama this week. We're talking about Itaewon class, which is something that Angela has brought up. Was this one of your, one-shots in the past?
I think I mentioned it in, our New Year's reflection thing.
Yes, I think you did. Yeah. Actually, as I'm pulling up, yeah, you did. In those show notes, I have it. You mentioned Itaewon class. Nice. So yeah, you mentioned that one. You mentioned Goblin, but this is the first one we're watching for the show. Yeah, it's called Itaewon class. It's on Netflix. 16 episodes. They're about an hour each. This podcast is just going to be about the first 8 episodes. We're going to do the second half of this season. And there's just the one season. We're going to do the second half of the season in a couple weeks, just so I have time to watch it all, because they are long. You have to pay attention because it's all Korean language, so you got to read all the subtitles, or most of the subtitles. Get the gist of what's going on. How do you want to set this up, Ange? Right? Because there's a lot. It's 8 hours of TV, so a lot happens. How do you want to set this up for our conversation?
Well, I'm curious first to know were you excited to watch this, or were you like how I felt when you made me read that comic book?
Which comic book?
Any of them.
So not excited. Excited is not the word. I knew you were really into it, and so I think I trust that when you say something's pretty good, I'm not gonna. I was I didn't think I was gonna hate it. I was maybe I won't connect with this the way that Angela did, but I didn't think it was gonna be bad, and I didn't think I was gonna hate it or anything. But I wasn't excited. I was it'll be interesting to see what this is. And so it starts out.
Yeah. Well, so we should say the first 3 episodes are really all just kind of groundwork.
Yeah.
Which kind of sucks because they're so long, and I feel that's sort of hard to get into it when it's there's so much exposition. Is that the word, exposition?
Exposition, yeah.
Yeah. I remember you had texted me after you watched the first episode, the first 2. What was your first reaction after at least watching the first couple?
So I think I had watched the first half of the first one. I think I brought that up on the podcast, but I actually don't know if that made it into the episode. But because it starts with, all right, let me go. We have a character sheet here because there's a lot of characters. So it starts with Jo Iso talking to her therapist about how she thinks the world is boring, and she doesn't sort of like, maybe it's a little bit overstating, but she doesn't quite see the point of being alive. She's a bit of a nihilist, where she doesn't really find meaning in the things that most people find meaning in. So she's, and she's like, they set her up, right, as like being very, very smart. In a later episode, she's like supposed to be some sort of brilliant genius, and she is very smart, but kind of what she uses her gifts for is questionable. But so that opening, I was like, oh, I was expecting something very, not ridiculous, but maybe more like, I don't know if like corny is the word, or like, so, and this is a digression. We're already digressing. But you watched a different show that I saw you, or last time I was home, you were watching a different K-drama called Crash Landing on You, right? Yeah. And the premise of that is like a woman is skydiving, and she's South Korean, and she's skydiving, and she crash lands in North Korea, right? And it's sort of this like, that's a very ridiculous premise. And so just knowing that, I was like, oh, okay, so maybe it's going to be it's going to have that sort of tone to it, right? Where it's like, it's a little bit ridiculous, not super serious. And so that first scene kind of was like, oh, maybe they're doing something a little bit more, maybe they're doing something else here, right? So I have to like evaluate it on its own terms. And then, yeah, that first episode, those first couple episodes really move. And then there is a major character death right at the end of episode. Is that at the end of episode 1? Episode 1, yeah. That's at the end of episode 1, right? So our main character, Park Se-roi. I'm gonna start with our main character. He goes to a new school. He sort of sees someone getting picked on. He stands up for the person getting picked on and punches the bully in the face. The bully happens to be the son of this really... So this is a question, right? How, like, is this guy just, like, he has a really successful business, or is he, like, important in, like, Seoul? Or is he, like, an important person in Korea? Or is he just, like, a really good businessman? That's something I'm not quite sure of.
Think about it who's the Amazon dude?
Jeff Bezos?
Think about it if it's Jeff Bezos and his son is an asshole.
Okay, so he's supposed to be like that level of like...
Yeah, because it's like a really, really great Korean businessman.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so he punches his son in the face, and that businessman's name is Dae. And say that again? Dae. And he punches him in the face, and that I actually really like that scene, right? Because the teacher's like out of the classroom when it happens, right? The kids, like every single student is like head down in a book, like taking notes or something. So the teacher just like walks out of the classroom, and that's when like the fight happens. And then the teacher walks back in, kind of doesn't care until he sees who got punched in the face, right? Because this kid having a really important dad.
The kid's name is Gunwoon, by the way. Gunwoon is the one that got hit, not Dae.
Yeah.
Dae is, yeah.
Gunwoon, Dae is Gunwoon's dad.
Yes.
Dae is a massive prick, and he is going to remain a massive prick at least through the first 8 episodes. But he gets punched in the face by
our main character.
And so then the teacher's like, okay, you have, there's consequences. He gets hauled in front of Dae, and he's like, get down on your knees, apologize for punching my son in the face, and I'll make sure you're not expelled from school. Our main character, Seirori, says, no, I'm not going to do that. Like, your son was being an asshole. I didn't do anything wrong. And then we learn that Seirori's dad works for Dae, right? He's kind of high up in that business and works for him. And because Seirori, say that one more time for me, Ange. Seirori refuses to bow and apologize, he gets kicked out of school and his dad gets fired. And so that is sort of the like inciting injustice of the episode, or of the whole series. I would say that's the like inciting incident. And then at the end of episode 1, Gunwoon is he drunk driving, or is he just like a bad driver? That was the thing I wasn't sure of.
I'm not sure. I think he was just a bad driver.
Okay. Either way, he's like being a bad, negligent driver, and he runs down... Do we have our main character's dad's name in here, Ange? Say it to me.
Let me quick look it up. I have a link. I didn't put it in because I was like, well, he died in the first episode. Surely he won't come up that much. Park Bak Song-yo. Song-yo.
Song-yo?
Song-yo.
Okay, so Song-yo is the man who got fired because his son wouldn't apologize for punching Gun-woon in the face. He's driving home on a moped late at night, and Gun-woon sort of runs into him, forces him off the road. He crashes off the road because he's just in a moped, so he has no protection, and he dies there. And Dae, because he doesn't want his son to get in trouble, he doesn't want there to be a big scandal, he formulates or organizes a cover-up so Gun-woon does not get in trouble. But Se-ro-lee figures out, right, his son, Se-ro-lee, figures out what happened. I forget exactly how he figures out what happened, but he figures out what happened. He figures out that Gun-woon is the one who killed his dad by crashing into him with his car. And there's this like very dramatic meeting in the rain, which some of the lines in this, I didn't write any of them down, but I should have, because there are just, I don't know if it's like a translation thing or if they're kind of funny, but right, it's like raining and he meets him and he's like, I have a 15-year plan to get back at you or something to that respect, right? It's like very dramatic.
That's how like a lot of K-dramas just are, and I also don't know if it's like a translation thing or if it's just like the vibe.
You mean because to us that sounds a little bit ridiculous. So you're saying you're not sure if that's a translation thing or if it's just like that's how they wrote it? Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Because it's like Se-ro-lee kind of talks like that through the entire thing.
Yeah.
And
he talks like that more than I would say most other characters. Mm-hmm. There aren't too many other characters that have what I would call a little bit like kind of odd stilted dialogue, right? But we'll spend some time talking about him later because I still can't. The series revolves around him, but like I don't know if he's the most interesting thing going on it. So we'll spend some time talking about him later. Mm-hmm. But so I think I actually missed this, right? So he actually, at that confrontation, actually, he's like beating Gun-woon up, right? And mm-hmm. He gets pulled off of Gun-woon. He's like going to kill Gun-woon. He has a rock in his hand, and it's like he's going to kill him. One of his friends pulls him off, and he gets sent to prison for that, actually. So Dae and his son Gun-woon have sort of accidentally killed his dad, then covered it up.
And so another important thing to talk about is how he covered it up, because that's sort of important later, is Se-ro-lee found out because this detective, they framed an assistant of Dae-hee.
They framed a gardener, I think.
Or gardener. They framed somebody, and this police detective was like, something's not right, and then they find this footage, and Suwa, Se-ro-lee's friend, realizes that it's Gun-woon's car and tells Se-ro-lee, and that's how he finds out. But then the whole thing is there's this evidence that shows that Gun-woon did it, but mm-hmm. Dae-hee threatens the police detective.
Yes.
And the police detective actually just ends up quitting his job.
Yes.
So there's nobody to really say actually this guy did it.
Yeah, but so Se-ro-lee feels injustice, right? Because they killed his dad, they covered him up, and he got sent to jail.
And he wanted to be a police officer, and he can't be a police officer.
Right? They say this a bunch. They're they're juniors or seniors in high school when this happens, right? Is that the sort of
seniors? I think
they're about to, right? They're preparing. Part of that first and second episode is going to interviews for university, right? Going to college interviews. So they're seniors. So Se-ro-lee gets sent to prison because he gets expelled. He gets sent to prison. So he never actually graduates high school. So a thing Gun-woon likes to say to him is that he only has an elementary school education. Apparently I guess that would suck to be reminded of that. Anyways, so he's sort of very hard done by Gun-woon and Dae, right? And he carries this. So here's the first question, right? Is this is a show about, is this a show about revenge or is this a show about justice, right? Because I'm not quite Se-ro-lee has this whole plan, right? He talks about it's a 15 or 16-year plan to bring down Dae, right? To bring down him, bring down his company, and to make them pay for what they did to him, right? And like the way he goes about it is like very, I don't know, he's going about it in an interesting way over the first 8 episodes. He plays the long game. Yes, he's playing a very, very long game, right? He's playing a very long game.
15 years.
Yes, a very long game in which, and we get some big time jumps in those first couple episodes. We get some big, because right, so that happens at university. He goes to jail. We sort of see a few scenes of him in jail. It goes pretty rough for him, but he spends it reading books and learning about Daehae's business. And he comes out of jail. And then he goes on like a fishing boat, or he goes out to sea, right?
He works on a fishing boat to earn money so he can come back to Itaewon and open his pub.
Yeah, and Itaewon is this sort of trendy part of Seoul, right? Seoul, South Korea.
It's like the San Francisco of Seoul.
The San Francisco of Seoul, okay.
Yeah, it's not quite as like busy, as businessy as New York, I think.
Okay. And so I think it's at the end of episode 2, right? He comes back, he's earned a bunch of money, and then I think at the end of episode 2 is when he opens his restaurant, or he like has bought the place that is going to become his restaurant. I'm pretty sure that's the end of episode 2, right? Mm-hmm. So the first 2 episodes are like this inciting incident, so that gives him his motivation, how he sort of is preparing to enact his like revenge/justice. And then episode 2 is like, okay, he's going to do it by opening a restaurant.
Well, because another thing is him and his dad were going to open a restaurant.
Yes, they were going to open a restaurant. They were in the process of opening a restaurant when his dad was killed. Yeah. And then, so that's the first 2. And then the next 6 episodes are him sort of running this restaurant, meeting various other people in Itaewon who help him run the restaurant, right? Who for him at the restaurant, and sort of these kind of interactions with Daehae and Gunwoon as he's trying to like figure out how can he, I don't know, like piss them off or like worry them or just make them nervous that he like has a plan of what to do, kind of.
I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like hard to figure out exactly, because like he wants Danbum Pub to like become like a really big company, kind of like the Jangakol, like the company Day runs, so that they can like compete and he can like ultimately like win over them.
Yeah.
And that's like his long term. And so like I guess he's like trying to do that, and then for a while Daehae and like Gunwoon, they don't really worry about him because like it's just a small pub and they don't think he's gonna like do anything. And then gradually they start to worry about him, and then he's kind of just like
There's some of those scenes between between him and Daehae, right? There's a couple of scenes when they like meet each other and they're shot like, I guess we should say like this show is like, it looks really good. There's a couple like action scenes that are a little bit wonky, but as far as like, you know, there's nothing like amazing about like the shot selection, right? It's pretty straightforward as far as sort of how characters are framed and everything, but like it looks really nice. They're like on real sets. It's like definitely shot on location. Like I would say it like looks pretty nice, right? Maybe, you know, like probably any of your, you know, something that we both like is like Elementary, right? Like shot all on location, and like looks good, looks like it's set in a real place. There's no laugh track or anything, right? Because it is a drama. It's supposed to be kind of intense, but there's some of those scenes when it's like Seroi and Daehae like in a room like talking very seriously about how one is going to like dominate or not dominate the other. And I'm always like, these are like one dude runs like a really good, I guess it kind of puts it in a different light now that I know he's supposed to be like Jeff Bezos, but it's like you run like a tiny pub that you think is going to like take over the world or not take over the world, but it's going to become something that like brings this guy down, right? And it's interesting, right? Because the stakes, the like interpersonal stakes are pretty high because like one person wants to ruin the other person, but like the way he's going about it by like running this business is kind of, I don't know, to me that like that those two things don't kind of mesh the way he's going about it, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, his thing was like, I'm going to come back and open up a business, and this business is going to be so good that it like threatens you in some way, right? And like, I've just never like seen that idea before in like a show. I don't know. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a weird plan.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
It's a weird plan. But like, okay. Don't think about it. Because it's just confusing. Just don't think about it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, okay, so that's another thing I was trying to think about, is just like, what is the like American TV analog to this, right? Because I was like, this is, I guess this isn't like a procedural, right? Because there is like this, it's very plot heavy, right? Like so much in 1 hour, right? So much happens in like a single hour, right? And it is like interested in sort of, you get a lot of monologuing, you get a lot of characters doing like internal monologues, right? They're either like walking down the street or they're on a bridge looking over the ocean or something, right? And they're doing all this like internal monologuing, and then there will be like, it'll like cut to scenes of like, oh, this is when I realized this or whatever, right? And that happens like pretty frequently, right? And you're like, okay, this is what this character is like learning right now. And that's not something that really shows up on like your NCIS's or your like cop or doctor's show, right? They're not really like that, right? Because those are like pretty serialized in that it's kind of just like what's going on in this one episode, right? Like this 140-minute episode, right? Where this like has this really long story that we have to pay attention to. But so I was thinking, like, what's the sort of American TV analog for it? And tell me if you like think this is right, but I was thinking like, I think it's like soap operas or like telenovelas, right? Yeah. If you're in like Mexico or South America, right? Like soap operas or telenovelas, right? Where it's like you have characters and it's this like long ongoing story, but the sort of point of it is that like you're sort of bought in that these characters are like the most they're really interesting, right? They're the most interesting thing going on is just these characters and like whatever you're doing. Like, don't think about too hard about what you're doing. You just kind of have to be there for whatever they're doing, and like it is interesting, right? You have to like really buy into that premise. Do you think that's a good comparison, or do you have like something else you would compare it to?
No, that's good. It's a little bit depressing how you put it, but it's good.
Well, no, I mean, there is a huge difference, right? Because, like, the only context I have for soap operas is, like, being over at grandma's house and they would be on in the middle of the day. Like, I've never actually sat down and watched them. And those things have gone on, right? Like, Days of Our Lives or something, right? Those things have, like, gone on for, like, decades at this point, and they just, like, shuffle new people in and out. And this is, like, much more contained. But I think if you don't think... And maybe this is where we should start talking a little bit more about some of the specific characters, right? If you don't think like Seroi is like very interesting, because the show thinks he's super interesting, right? Would you agree with that? Mm-hmm. The show thinks he's like super interesting, right? And if you don't, like, you might struggle with this one a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know. Do you have a favorite character? Is there anyone who's like you really like when we get to like spend time with them?
I think that Joey So is, like, interesting. Because I do think, like, at the beginning of, like, the first episode when she was, like, with the therapist, that made her kind of seem, like, cooler than she was. But then in the end, it kind of just ended up being her, like, wanting to, like, have Sayori like her back. I don't know. Also, it's, like, some of the characters, like, I didn't, like, why was Sayori, like, still talking to Usua? The girl who's working at Junk, like, why are you still, like, oh my gosh, like, ugh.
So that was so set stupid. That up, Benj, because we didn't set that up. So set up their relationship.
So Sua was Sayori's classmate back in high school.
She saw the fight that he had with Gunwon, yeah.
Plus, she was really close to his dad too. But she's an orphan, and after the car accident, I think Dae knew that Sua knew something, so he was like, hey, he basically like, I'm gonna like pay for your college education and like give you like living expenses, and, like keep your mouth shut, basically. Mm-hmm. And Sua was like, okay. She felt conflicted about it, but like ultimately she was like, okay. Which like, I mean, it's not great, but like it's fine, you know? What bugged me more is like, why are you still trying to like insert yourself into this guy's life when like it's like, I don't know, it's just it's weird.
Yeah. And we never see her, I guess we never see her, like, talking to other people. Like, I assume she has other friends, but she's always hanging out at Dambam Pub, right? Like, and even though she works for Dae, who hates Dambam and everyone who works there, she still spends a lot of time hanging out there. And right, sometimes it's like she's spying on them or like trying to like sabotage or manipulate them, right? Sometimes it's kind of like that, and sometimes it's like she's genuinely trying to help. But she's very, I think her thing, right? So her and Seroi, she goes to see him in prison, right? And she accepts that offer from Dae, right? She's not going to like testify or say what actually happened because he's gonna like pay for her college or whatever, right? So it would be like a bad decision for her. But Seroi says like, you have to look out for you, right? Like, don't in any way feel bad about or like feel bad for doing that. And she, like all the other characters in this show, right? Seiroi is set up to be this sort of... Nobody
like Seiroi actually exists in real life.
Yeah.
He's way too, like, agreeable, and, like, you can, like, he lets people, like, walk over them. Especially, like, Suan. It's just, like, that is the part that's, like, that makes you a little less interesting if you're just, like, not gonna ever have, like, kind of reaction. I don't know.
Yeah. But he's also, like, he has, like, extremely strong morals, right? He has this, like, extremely strong sense of right and wrong. And he is never, what he thinks is right and wrong, he's always right about that, right? Like, he always knows exactly what is right and exactly what is wrong. And he's never, at least so far, right? I guess, we're speaking about through 8 episodes. That's all I've seen, right? Through those 8 episodes, he is never wrong about what is right and what is wrong. Although I would say potentially in episode 7, he gets something wrong, but we'll get to that. She's very drawn to that, right? Because she realizes when she took that deal from Dae, she's like, oh, I compromised my morals to get what I want, right? And this is a person who will get what he wants and will not compromise his morals, right? Which is what goes back to what you said, right? Like, that doesn't really exist in the world, right? Like, or I guess I can't really think of an example of that, right? Like, getting what you want and like compromising your morals. It helps that he seems to have an unlimited supply of money, but like maybe that's besides the point. So she's really attracted to that, and I think that is what attracts everyone else to him, right? Because now that we're like talking about the other people who work at, if we're talking about the other characters, right? So he met another guy in prison who at first wanted to like beat him up and be really mean to him, but Seiroi's sort of conviction and his focus on his learning while in prison was like sort of won this guy over, right? Like Seiroi's his morals, his sort of ethics, his whole way of being, like, except for Dae, right? Except for this one businessman, it sort of makes everyone like him or want to sort of work with him or be near him, right?
Like a role model.
Yeah, he's very much a role model, right? He's like, he attracts people. And I guess that's why I say, like, the show thinks he's the most interesting character, even though, like, I think there's potentially more interesting things going on, like, on the periphery. But yeah, so that brings, like, Usuwa, that keeps her coming around. That's what, even though Joiso, right, even though she's sort of this nihilist, even though she doesn't, like, right, it sets her up as being one of those people who's, like, so smart they don't care about anything. That's sort of what she's... Is she, like, she kind of is in love with him, but, like, maybe not. She's very conflicted about it.
Because, like, I feel like her thing is, like, she, like, I guess it could be a crush, but, like, her way of, like, having a crush on someone is, like, weird.
Yeah. So that's what sort of attracts her to him, right? Because she, maybe similar to Usoa, right? She realized, like, I don't care about anything. She's very much out for herself at all times, right? She's like, what is the best decision for me and what I want to do? And doesn't really care about other people, but she's sort of attracted to the way that Seiroi is always thinking about other people and always knows what's right. That is sort of attracts her to him. yeah, so right, Joiso's hanging around, Usoa's hanging around. The guy you met in prison, Song Kwan, is sort of very a strong defender of him. Then there's
Gunwon's
Hyunhee.
brother.
Oh, yeah. Gunsu is Gunwan's brother, right?
Stepbrother. He's like,
half
because the dad had like an affair with like a maid in the household or something.
Yes.
So he's like illegitimate, and that's why like he's not really like in with that group.
Yes. So he, even though his father runs this, is this like businessman who hates Seiroi, he works for Seiroi at Danban Pub, and you sort of learn in the last couple of episodes, right, episodes 7 and 8, sort of is Seiroi's little brother, even though no, he's not actually his little brother, but like that's kind of their relationship, even though I never really got a sense of that. I don't think the show does a great job showing us that.
I thought it was like more like Gunso needed like some, because he didn't really have like, he's not close with his family. He doesn't really have a lot of friends. His only friend is like Joiso, who's like kind of like terrorizes him a little bit. And Suri was like, I thought I could kind of be like a role model for you, or like somebody who you could like look up to. But they don't really like go into their relationship besides like that. And
then there's Hyunhee, who's a complicated. I'm not quite sure how if I like how the show is handling them as a character.
What do you mean?
She's the chef. Well, so right, there's I forget what episode it is, but Joiso and Gunsu and Song Kwan, they're going to go clubbing, right? They're going to go out to a club. And it was Hyunhee's day off, so like they're not with them, but they go to the club and they see Hyunhee there, and she is dressed as a woman, right? And she comes over to them, and they talk, and she sort of comes out to them that she is transgender, right? And this character has a very androgynous look about them, right? Yeah, they're very androgynous. They're, they go like masculine pronouns at their job, right? When they're in the pub, like they use masculine pronouns with them, and everyone thinks they're male. They're transgender and they identify as a woman, but they don't ever really like talk about it, right? It's like, give it some time. Okay, all right. So
it does get let's not talk about that, because that comes up later.
Okay. So that is okay. I'm glad to hear that, because like the way that is dealt with in episodes 1 through 8, like Hyunhee, right? Because I like initially Sung Kwan, right, and he's kind of he's not supposed to be an idiot, but he's like very impulsive. Is that the word? How would you describe him?
Kind of like dumb jock vibe, okay. But if the dumb jock got into a gang after high school.
Yes, that's probably, yeah. I really like that. Yeah. So yeah, he's always kind of yelling something, and he has like very loud reactions to a lot of things, right? And so he kind of has this very rude, and I don't know, I was very like put off to his reaction when he found out Hyunhee was transgender. But then the pub, right, were like, they were thinking about firing Hyunhee because people might not be like comfortable with having a chef who's transgender, right? Which is very weird. And something that I was struggling a little bit while watching this, right, is like I'm watching this, in the US, and like I'm coming through this and like filtering it through a very like Western, like Eurocentric lens, right? Like all of like my morals and ethics and values, right? I'm come from that point of view, right? But this is a show that's like made in Korea, right? And so like I don't know what the conversation or how like LGBTQ issues are handled over there, right? I don't know what the like conversation over there is around those things. And so I was like trying to, and this comes up also with Tony, right? Who is a character who's only introduced in the last few episodes, who is Black, but his dad is Korean. But no one and he speaks perfect Korean, right? I think his dad's Korean and his mom's French, and he speaks perfect Korean and French. And the only reason they hire him is because they see that he's black, so they assume he's American and he speaks English, and they want another English speaker. And sort of that's kind of his thing in the first couple in the episodes that he's in, is right that no one thinks he's Korean, even though he's always saying he's Korean. And it's kind of played for laughs in a way that like is uncomfortable, I think, right? Because in episode 8 they're going to a club, and then the club is like, no, they specifically say no African or Middle Eastern people allowed, right? But like no black or brown people, right? So like this explicitly racist policy, and he's there with the members of the pub and no one stands up for him and is like, let him in or we're leaving, right? And Tony just like runs off and no one specifically stands up for him. And, you know, like that looks horrible because it's just a very, like it is just racism, like that is racism at that point. And but again, like, you know, I don't know how that plays, right? The show is like, it's a Korean show, it's made for a Korean audience, like I don't know how that plays there, right? I don't know what those conversations about race and blackness and those are in Korea. And so I was like trying to reserve judgment, but hearing you say like, you know, kind of hold off until the second half of the episode is like, makes me maybe feel a little bit better that hopefully they handle some of those things with a little bit more tact, because they really don't in the first 8 episodes. Is that, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't give anything away, but like specifically with both of those characters, like we're going to learn more about them.
Yeah, especially Tony.
Okay.
And like also, so like I guess when I was watching it, like I don't think I had that same reaction. I think that like the way that they sort of handled it was a little bit like too casual.
Which one specific, like which incident specifically?
Probably both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think a lot of people like at first liked that they even included it, because like I've watched a lot of K-dramas and like they don't go into that, and like they don't even like those LGBTQ and also like just like racism and like against like foreigners, like that doesn't really come up at all. And so like I think also a lot of people, you know, weren't super impressed by the way it was executed. They were like happy it was talked about, but not exactly. They thought that it could have been executed more. Yeah.
I guess that is, though, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to in the second half, right? And I just want to say, like, so with transgender people, right, they often, when they sort of transition, right, whether that's like surgery or just sort of their statement that they have transitioned from male to female or female to male, right, they often choose a new name. I don't think Hyuni, that character does not give a second name, right? Because I just want to like make sure we're being careful about like dead naming, right? Where you after a person transitioned, like that is not right. They have a new name; they're a new person. So like the only name we have for Hyuni is Hyuni, and their pronouns are never specifically identified as to what their pronouns are, which is why I'm just calling them them. Yet. Okay, good. All right. I don't know
if we should talk more about this, because I feel like because like you don't know what's gonna happen later, and I'm having a very hard time keeping my mouth shut.
We'll stop. I just like for like on the recording, right? I just want to like make sure that like I'm trying to be sensitive, but like the show, I think it really only comes up in that one episode, and it's like it's not handled super well. I'm glad that they don't forget about it, because that was my biggest fear, is that like they just never come back to it. But I am glad to hear that they're going to come back to both of those things. Okay, all right, we can leave Hyuni and Kim Tony behind, and all right, what do we want to move on to next? We should spend a little bit of time talking about Gun-won, because I actually, even though he's like the worst and I hate him.
Do you feel sorry for him because his dad made him kill that chicken?
Oh my god, that scene. That was another scene. I don't think I texted you after that one, but that was another scene where that show was doing the most. Do you want to describe that one a little bit? I forgot about that, but that scene.
I don't remember what prompted it, but his dad takes him to this bar and he's talking about how
They're
a
having
prey
chicken.
and predator.
I think it's just like they're gonna eat chicken.
Yeah, but then like the dad's trying to instill in when this idea of like there's prey and predator and you're a prey and this is what you do to you're a predator and this is what you do to a prey.
Yeah.
When he makes him kill his chicken.
And
he's like makes like with his bare hands.
Yeah, and he twists the neck and there's like this I think he like screams, right? As he twists the neck. It's like it's very dramatic in a way that's kind of great, right? It's kind of great how overly dramatic that scene is. And then, it only comes up one other time, right? Someone serves him chicken and he won't eat it, right? He doesn't eat chicken anymore. I don't feel bad for him, right? I mean, because the first scene we get of him is him being a bully, right? And just, I guess his dad probably was pretty horrible to him as far as like the dad wants him to be someone who can take over the company, right? He wants him to be this sort of cold-hearted, predator businessman, right? The dad's whole thing is about being a predator, right? And like having power, right? And specifically in his case, power is manifested in capital and money, right? His dad's like this ultimate capitalist who exerts his power through money and business, and he wants his son to be able to do that afterwards. I don't know if you agree with this. Tell me what you think about this. I think Gun-won, that actor, I think might be the best actor on the show. Like, he's the one that makes me sort of believe what he's saying, right? Whenever he's in a scene, right, there's always these sort of weird power dynamics whenever he's in a scene, right? Because he's actually quite insecure, right? He plays this, he's always sort of bluffing. Right, whenever he comes up against Seiroi, right, he's a little bit taller than him. He's very stoic. He doesn't smile. He has a very like flat expression. Whenever he comes up again, right, he always has to sort of bluff that he's in control, but he's very scared, right? And whenever he's coming up against his dad, right, he sort of has to do the same thing, right? He cannot betray how uncomfortable he is, right? And it's sort of, he has this sort of like blank, he can go from like very blank to having this sort of like twitchy mouth and going into like laughing or sort of this like deadly sneer, right? And so while I hate him, I think he's like maybe the best actor because I think he has to like do the most, right? I think he has to do the most acting because Seiroi just kind of gets to be really like expressionless most of the time. Like he might be a really good actor, but like he's not the most dynamic when he's on screen, at least through these first 8 episodes. And yeah, so like Gun-won, while I hate him, right, I think he's like he seems like actually be a really good actor and like bringing a lot to the scenes. I don't know. Is there anyone who when they're on camera you're like kind of like really quite captivated or anything like that?
I don't know. I think that it's like it's very dramatic acting, like kind of like melodramatic, and like if I think about it, it's not really my kind of type of thing, Yeah. Because it's like when people are like actors are like have like more melodramatic acting, it's hard to tell if it's like acting or if that's just like them staring off into the distance. And I was like, well, that can't be that hard, right? So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I think that at times Seiroi can be a little bit boring, or at times Joiso can be just like a little bit like extra,
Yeah.
But that's just like how they're written.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to be. But I guess I don't know. I don't know if, I don't know. Like, because Gun-won, right? He has to be. That's tough. I think that's hard, right? To be sort of playing a character who is putting out a front that is powerful, but like betraying deep vulnerability beneath that, right? I think that's really hard to do, and I think he does that really well, right? Because you never actually think that he's in control or he is in any way intimidating. He's never actually a threat, even though that's what's constantly coming out of his mouth, right? That's constantly what's coming out of his actions. He's like stalking around, right? Or he's like hitting a wall, right? He's angry, and he's a little, I think he is like a little bit more of at least thus far, his acting is a little bit more physical than everyone else's, but right, there's constantly this like, oh, this dude's actually a wimp, and like this dude actually sucks, like right beneath that. So yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, well, I hate him, but like I find him to be like when he's on screen, he's usually the most interesting person on screen. But like, and I guess that's kind of why I was so intrigued, right? I'm intrigued to see where they go with Kim Tony, right? Because he's constantly like most of the time, right? He's smiling, he's like joking, he's like laughing, which is something that most of the other characters don't do, right? He has a certain like levity to him that he brings to a lot of scenes that I really appreciate. And I hope, I guess I hope we get a lot more of him in the second half of this season. But yeah, all right, so we talked a little bit about Serui's plan. Talked a little bit about his plan, the oddity of it, right? Seems like getting revenge is by opening a business. It seems a little bit odd. We talked a little bit about the characters. Anything else you want to hit, Ange? You said you had a couple notes. Anything else you want to hit?
Let me check. No, we could just like sort of like conclude it, I guess. Talk about like the stuff that happened at the end, where like it's sort of interesting to see how like Daehee's like trying to like sabotage or like take down Seru by like buying the building.
Yeah.
And then the last episode that you watched is they're trying to recruit Joey So, and then the last episode is like she's meeting with him.
Yeah, at the end of episode 8, episode 8, the building that Danbam Pub was in, right, in this sort of trendy part of town in Itaewon, the Daehee bought the building and kicked Danbam Pub out, right? He raised their rent, so they couldn't afford, so they had to move. So they go and buy a new building, right? They buy a building, right? So they own it, they can't get kicked out. And it's, are they still in Itaewon? Is that building still okay, it's still in Itaewon.
But it's just in an alley.
Yeah. And so they're right, and they haven't opened their new spot yet, but they're setting up. And then you get it's Daehee and Gunwoon in a room, and Daehee is sort of explaining to his son, right? Seidoi makes him a little bit nervous, right? His sort of conviction makes him nervous, right? Because they can't sort of like, this is someone who he can't intimidate, right? You get the sense that Daehee has never met someone who he cannot intimidate, right? Because he is this like powerful businessman, right? Like that is something that hasn't happened to him, or at least not in a really, really long time, right? Because even Seidoi's father, right, was very deferential to Daehee, right? Because he had to be. And so he's telling him a little bit how Seidoi has worried him, and yeah, and then he brings someone in to sort of deal with it, and we see Joey So walk into the room, indicating that she's sort of gonna like betray Danbam, right? She's gonna betray them and start working for Jangako, or she's gonna do something, right? We're not sure what. She doesn't say anything. We just see her walk into the room, and she's like smiling, right, indicating that she's like pleased to be there. Because she is very much out for herself at all times, right? Like I don't think there's anyone that she actually cares about, right? She doesn't. We get a pretty interesting scene earlier where like she tells her mom that she's not going to go to university, and like her mom kicks her. I don't know. Her mom kicks her out because she won't go to university, and then she like. Do you remember the scene where she like flips the coin into the river? This is one of those very like melodramatic scenes you were talking about before, right? It was like, if the coin is heads, then I'll like make sure I'm like a person that like lives up to what my mom wants, and if it comes up tails, I'll do what I want and I won't worry about anyone else. And then she like flips it up, and it's like she like misses it, and the coin goes into the water, and then she walks away, and she's like, I think the coin came up tails, so I'm gonna do whatever I want. It's a lot, but yeah, so like she is constantly out for herself, and right, there's actually there's some really good scenes in, like, I think it's 7 or 8, right? Because when there's like always something else to talk about because so much happens in this show, right? So when Daehee bought the building, Gun-soo, right, his son, his sort of estranged son, right, or his like half son, is like, I'm gonna go talk to my dad. I will get him to not kick you kick you out of the building to keep your rent at the same, but he's probably going to tell me that he will only do that if working here, right? Because the dad really hates that his half son is working in this pub, right? And Joiso was like, yeah, go do that, right? It's good for all of us. Like, you should really do that because it's good for us. And Seiroi gets really, really mad about this, right? Because he very much sees Danbam Pub as like a family, right? He's really into this idea of the family and like that he can do anything if he has like a group of people that believe in him behind him. And so he like threatens to remove Joiso from the pub, right? To fire her, get rid of her. And, you know, she doesn't understand why, right? Because she's always putting sort of profits and like logic above everything else. It ends up like fine, right? But that might have been a point where she kind of decided to turn on Seiroi and Danbam. But we'll see, I guess, in the latter half of the season. That's kind of what is set up for that. One other thing I wanted to talk on. So to go back to Seiroi for a second, right? There's an interesting scene. Do you remember when he goes to visit? You mentioned the policeman who quit earlier. Do you remember the scene when he goes to visit him?
Yeah, with Joiso.
Yeah, he takes Joiso with him to visit this policeman, right? And this is the policeman who knew that there was something weird about the way his dad died, right? And this policeman was told, don't look into it, don't worry about it. And this policeman, like, he didn't feel good about it, but he like followed that order. He was like, all right, I've been told to leave it alone, so I'll leave it alone, right? And Seiroi sort of goes to visit him, because I think he wants him to testify, right? Or he wants him to like speak up after all these years. Is that what he wants?
Yeah, I think I don't really understand what prompted it, but yeah, okay. That's what he wants.
Okay, so yeah, he goes to visit him, and the policeman, right? He kind of goes to do this sometimes, right? And it causes him a lot of. He's sort of forced to relive this probably one of the most difficult moments of his life, right? When he had to sort of decide, am I going to sort of choose to keep my career because he has a family, right? We see he has a young daughter. Am I going to sort of choose to keep my career so I can provide for my family? Or am I going to choose to pursue the truth, right? Pursue what I know is the truth, even though people are telling me not to, right? And he makes the decision, right, that he's not going to look into it and like kind of take care of his family, right? And Seiroi, he's begging Seiroi in this moment. He's like, can you leave me alone? Like, this is, every time you show up, it's really hard for me. Like, I know I did wrong, but like, you're sort of forcing me to relive this, right? And in maybe cruel's not the right word, right? But in his most, I'm going to use it here, right? Maybe in his most cruel moment so far, he's like, no, you deserve to sort of, I forget what he says to him exactly, right? But you deserve to sort of feel this pain and to be punished for what you failed to do all those years ago. And I don't know, it's the first moment when like anyone has really pushed back on what Seiroi is doing.
Yeah, I think he kind of expects, he seems to have like very specific like values and morals, and I think that he expects other people to like have the same ones. But, you know, that's not exactly the case, you know, because it's like nobody like him actually like, exists in real life, right? Nobody, like people, he might be able to sort of like throw it all away and like come clean and like, bye daughter, never see you again because I'm doing the right thing, but like other people can't do that. And I don't know if he maybe understands that, you know, that like we can't just do that.
Yeah. His morality is very black and white, right? It's there's right and there's wrong, and you either did right or you did wrong. And I don't really know how he feels about like forgiveness, right? He's, you know, not asking him to like forgive Daehee or Gunwan, right? For like killing his dad and then covering up, right? I think that would be a lot to ask, right? But like, I don't know, that policeman, I guess that's just, if we're talking, you know, kind of going back into like, what do we want from the second half of the season? I would like a few more characters to sort of push back on Seiroi, and it's like, are you actually going about this the right way? Is the like justice that you're seeking actually justice, right? Because like, I get you, right? We get why that policeman made that decision, right? it might not have been morally right, but we understand like why he did it and sort of he prioritized his family in that sense, right? And like it's tough to fault him for doing that, right? And so yeah, something I would like to see a little bit is just like right, if Seiroi is someone with this very black and white idea of morality, to sort of have characters who have a sort of right their sense of morality, or their sense of morality because of things that they have done, or just because of this is what they believe, allows for those shades of gray, right, in sort of what is right and what is wrong, and sort of for him and those characters to come into conflict, and for him to maybe reflect on like, am I actually going about this the right way, right? Because so far no one has like been able to convince him or show him or talk to him that he has done anything incorrect so far, right? Like he hasn't been wrong about anything up to this point. And so yeah, if that's I guess that's sort of a conflict I would like to see in the second half of the season. Don't know if we'll get it, but I think that would be interesting. Yeah.
I don't know either.
I don't know.
Let's talk about the music.
Okay, yeah.
Let's stop talking about the story, because it's very hard to hear you talk about this without me wanting to spoil it.
Okay.
I'm not saying I think you're being too harsh on how you're analyzing it, but you are making. Let's just talk about the music.
Okay. Well, wait. So I have one question for you, right? So how long ago did you watch this?
Like maybe October.
Okay. And like, were you in right away? Like, when you put it on? We've mentioned that first scene with Joey So talking to her therapist, right? That's like an interesting first scene. But like, what drew you into this and like kept you watching?
It was more interesting because like a lot of K-dramas, they deal more around like love stories.
Okay.
And like that's great, but like I just thought that this was like interesting because like the plot was like not centered around like a love story. And like even if these like people do not exist in real life and stuff, and like they're kind of like extra, it's still like just fun to like watch them, you know.
All right, so that just the fact that it
like,
had
the characters
a
like
different
might be,
focus and a different
bit,
priority
a
was
little,
like
more
something that drew you in the first
just,
time you watched
extra,
this.
But like they're still it's still entertaining for me. Like I think it's like you seem really caught up on this whole idea that like why does he want to like build a pub to like do this prevention? It's like I didn't care about it as much, you know, and I was kind of surprised that you just like I don't like that's not what was like. What's the point of questioning it? Because that's obviously what the whole thing's going to be about, you know?
All right. Maybe I need to recalibrate a little bit before I go to that second half. All right. You mentioned, let's definitely spend the time talking about the music, though, because the soundtrack is really, really good for this. Can you, go for it, Ange. What are some of your favorite songs? And, like, talk to us a little bit about who made some of this music and stuff.
So the opening is like fine, but I really like the you talked about it too, the inspirational montage song.
Yes.
It's called Start Over or Start Again.
Yeah. I think the first time the first time it plays is when he's walking onto the like fishing boat. I think that's the first time it plays. It's a really good
Start
song.
Over. That's what it's called. And like, right, because it's like for me, it's like when I listen to this, like, ooh, like, I get chills because like I think it's just a really good song. And like I really like the singer's voice. I think it just fits really well in like this sort of like story. Yeah. There's also another song that we haven't gotten to yet. That V from BTS wrote and sings because he is friends with the actor who plays Seiroi. Okay. So he was able to write a song. That one's really good one too.
There's a kind of upbeat song. I think it plays in like the middle of episode 7. I'm not sure of the name of it. It's like this kind of upbeat, like poppy song. Really, really good. But like, I don't know, the musical, they'll like drop, right? Especially when they're like kind of focusing on a single character, right? Who's like having they're like coming to a realization, right? And they're having like a montage or something, right? The music they pick to like go over those is often often like really, really solid. And yeah, especially Start Over when that plays, like something, you know, something's intense is going on. I quite like the intro song. I'm not sure what it's called, but the song's really good.
It's called, oh shoot, I just had it. You keep talking.
Well, the song's really good. It's kind of like, it's a little bit of a like dramatic song in itself, setting this tone, but then
You Make Me Back. Sorry. You Make Me Back by Wusa.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then it's sort of, the intro is like painted versions of the characters' faces. These like very brightly painted versions of their faces, with these sort of like running colors. It's a really good intro to the characters or to the show. You can like, you know, you can always like skip the intro on Netflix, but I like watching that one. Because of the song and everything. Yeah, so that's really good. But yeah, I think I'll link a couple of these songs in the show notes. I'll try to find that one in episode 7. I'm not sure what it's called, but we'll link Start Over and we'll link the intro song. Anything else, Ange?
I'm eager for you to like just finish it.
Okay.
I think that'll be that conversation will be better.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess.
I'm not saying that it's gonna be like you're not gonna be like super, super blown away, but I think that it'll fill in some stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I've like honestly been quite surprised. Like so one thing we didn't bring up, but like at some point so the fight, right, when in that first episode when Gunwan was picking on the person on this other student in school and Seidoi stood up for him. I think it's like episode 5 or 6. You just like that person comes back and they're like he's like an investor or a banker of some type, right? Like that is just like, oh, now he's like a person in this show. I don't know, like this, I was like really surprised, like not, you know, it's not like blowing your away or everything, but like this show definitely has the capability to like surprise, and you know, I think it could go some really interesting places with what they're doing. There's also this like there's sort of this like corporate espionage angle, right? Because there's this other woman at Jangako who we haven't really talked about, but she also wants to take down Daehei because she hates his son as well, and she wants to sort of remove him as chairman, and she wants to take over the company. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot going on in this show, right? Again, each episode's an hours, and there's a lot going on. But yeah, like really, really entertaining. Yeah. All right. Should we go to the next part of the show?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll be back with our one shots after this short break.
Hello, we're back.
With the ASMR section of the podcast.
I got an ASMR Mikey type thing.
Edzo does have a new microphone. I hope it sounds better. It sounds better to me right now. In the edit, we'll see. But yeah, maybe we'll start the ASMR pod. But that would be a different podcast, I think.
The ASMR Comics League.
It would be Comically at night, right? And it'd just be all ASMR.
Comically at night.
Yeah.
I still want to do a podcast where we try to talk about something like really like super serious while playing Overcooked.
Ooh, that would be a good stream.
Right?
Yeah.
Like we talk about the trolley problem while playing Overcooked.
That'd be good, right? And you're just like, I need rice. Put the rice on, and then you throw it down the well or whatever, and
yeah.
That's a good game. That's a good game. We gotta play that game again.
Yes, I thought we were this week, but you didn't text me.
We could do it this weekend, maybe.
I'm busy this weekend.
Oh, that's right. You're busy. We're both. We'll find a time.
All right. Anyways, I'll go first.
Okay.
So for my Asian 255 class, we have to do a visual essay where we get to pick like something. It has to be like Asian because we're studying like Korea.
What's a visual essay?
It's like Well, here, let me finish. So we pick a thing, so people can pick like chopsticks or like an umbrella or like hanfu, which is like a traditional Chinese clothing, and then using like you find like pictures, but like they have to be like smart people pictures, from like taken from like academic journals and stuff, and then you sort of tie it in to like there was one essay example. Hang on, let me look it up. So like one person took an umbrella and talked about how like it was related to the umbrella movement in Hong Kong. So it's like you kind of get to do something like that.
Okay.
Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah.
Or like how chopsticks shaped like China's values about like communism. I don't know.
Is it like is it written and then recited, or is it a little bit more improv? I guess that's kind of what I was wondering.
It's like an essay with photos.
Okay,
essay with photos.
Okay.
But like presented in a nice, visually pleasing way.
Got it.
Yeah. So for my project, I'm gonna watch this Chinese drama and sort of tie it in how it like ties into China's values on like filial piety. I'm just gonna sound dumb no matter what, whatever. And so I've been watching this drama. It's called Go Ahead. Its Chinese name is Yi Jiao Ren Zhi Ming. And it's really interesting because like again with like Chinese dramas, they're definitely not as like immersive as Korean dramas. I don't know if it's like a budget thing or just different. Because like I feel like Korean dramas like they look nice. You know, they look nice. And Chinese dramas like they do look nice, but it's not at the same level, I think. And the plot isn't usually as like strong or like as like intricate. But this plot is really intricate. It's about this family, and so there's like a widow and a widower. Is that the dude widow?
A widower is generally
a man widow,
yeah,
right?
I think so.
So there's like a widower and his daughter, and then they get some new neighbors upstairs who has like a son, and then that family like kind of breaks up, and then the son and then the dad kind of join the family of the widow and the daughter, and then like there's this other dude, and it's like basically they're this one family, but it's like these like three kids, not blood related, being raised together as siblings, and these like two dads who are like not in a relationship, they're just like two dads who are good friends who have just said like we are gonna raise these kids, and it's just really it's really interesting. I just finished it today, like before we started this podcast. So yeah, that's my that's my thing.
So and you're gonna tie that into, you said filial piety?
Yeah, especially
what is that specifically?
So it's like this idea of being like super not loyal, but like super respectful and like being really good to one's parents, like taking care of their parents, bringing like a good name to like your family, showing like lots of love and like respect.
Or piety is a word. It's usually like a religious word, right? It's kind of often when you hear people talking about being like pious, right? They're talking about how like it's a word that gets ascribed to like priests or monks.
Well, yeah. So nuns, this
right? They're like holy. It's almost like so it's like maybe a little bit below like holiness, right? So yeah, go ahead.
So it's a Confucius thing.
Oh, okay.
Because Confucius was super, in his Analects, he talked about how like it was really important to recognize social and family hierarchy, especially filial piety, and like really like saying like it's really important that like the parents are like above the kids. And so like no matter what the parent does, the kid always needs to be like respectful and like not like be at the beck and call, but like it's definitely different here because like I feel like if there's like a family here whose like mom like was a little bit like abusive, like the kid, like society would definitely be like, hey, cut her off, like you don't owe her anything, right?
Yeah.
But here it's like in China, at least, and like especially in this like drama, it's like you can't do that because that's just like culturally you can't do that. Like so it's sort of like re-examining that. And especially in China, there's like when it comes to like raising families, like that's like the mothers are like super like that's like a super mother thing to do. And these kids aren't really raised with like good mother figures. and it kind of looks in how the dads raised the kids, and like the dads like did a really good job. And so like I'm interested in kind of like looking at this drama and then sort of tying it into like how have, you know, like modern Chinese like values and beliefs, like are they changing a little bit, or like how is this like a reflection of what's going on like in China? I don't know exactly, like I have to research a lot about it, but that's like my thing.
Okay.
That I'm writing about.
That's cool. Like is in this class, did you talk about Confucius, or did you talk about this idea of filial piety, or is this like, did you make this connection between this idea and the show all on your own?
We had one lecture that was like talking about Confucius and like his analects, and like I just like filial piety was like in one of them. But like so like we didn't have to write about something that we specifically talked about in lecture. Mm-hmm. So it's like we touched on it, but not so much.
Okay, so you kind of put this together on your own, right?
Yeah, I just really wanted to watch TV for the project.
Well, so was this a show that you were going to watch anyways, or were like you were looking?
Yeah, I was already in the middle of watching it.
Okay.
So I was just like, well, I'm not really interested in writing about like chopsticks or something.
Okay.
So,
but you made the connection between what you were watching and what you were talking about in class.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's really cool. Nice. All right, mine is not nearly as interesting or academic as what Angela just laid out for us, so I apologize for that. But I have been watching a lot of the TV show Catfish. Have you seen that show?
Is that... No. What is it?
So it's a show where people email or like, you know, they get in contact somehow and they're like, me or my friend have been talking to this person online. You know, maybe I've talked to them on the phone. Maybe I only have like texted to them or like Instagram them or snapped, right? Like sometimes they've talked on the phone. Usually it's like only text communication, but most of the time they've never seen this person, right? They've never actually seen this person, right? And it's often been going on. Sometimes it's months, oftentimes it's like a couple of years, right? And they're like, I really want to know who this person is, right? Either because like I want to like take our friendship to the next level, or I want to take our romantic relationship to the next level, or like I need to know, is this someone I can be romantic with, or like do I need to move on? And so Neve, that's the guy who is on the show. Neve and his co-host Cami do sort of internet. They, you know, dig around on the internet to try to figure out who this person is, right? So like going through Instagram and Facebook profiles and running phone numbers and like reverse image searching pictures and like all the stuff to try to like figure out who is this actual person and can we figure out a way to get in touch with them. It started as a movie. Neve was catfished, right? The guy who is the main guy in the show was catfished. So him and his best friend Max, Max is no longer on the show. He did it with Neve for like 8 seasons, but then he left to go make movies. So Neve has found Cami, who's his new co-host. But they made a movie back together in 2010 where Neve was being catfished, and he went and found the person who was catfishing him and is like, why are you doing this to me? And now they turned it into a show on MTV, and we're going to watch this movie for the podcast at some point in the future because like...
Oh, okay.
No, you'll like it. It's good. It's... Because I've wanted to do a thing about like where I'm not like, I think I'm probably a little bit more interested in like talking broadly about like internet culture and like how it's really shitty a lot of the times. I'm probably more interested in that than you are. But one thing that, and so I want to write, the internet was a very different place in 2010, right? Like the first smartphone came out in 2008, right? So like that wasn't a big thing, right? People were still carrying around like iPods, and like Facebook was big, but not that big. And Instagram, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, there was no TikTok, there was no Messenger, there was no WhatsApp, right? Like we just didn't have this stuff, right? And so, you know, I think when we talk about that, right, how does that movie, right, or does that movie, that like 2010 movie, right, how does it sort of predict or sort of, yeah, I guess predict's kind of the word, like where the internet is going to go in the next 10 years, right, or does it do that at all? But one thing that Catfish, the show, does, right, is a show that's still coming out. They've made 9 seasons, 8 or 9 seasons of it now, and there's like 30 episodes in each season, right? So like a lot of episodes. It is it's one of it, like, I don't watch a ton of reality TV because I find it's always so like dramatic. It's generally kind of like negative, or just, I don't know, I find it kind of gross a lot of times.
You seemed really into watching Are You the One? I'm just saying. Are You the One? They're in this house, and there's like perfect matches. I was watching with you and Jerry, when I was with you in New York. You were like, you had lots of opinions. You may not like it, but you get into it. Let's like not pretend that you're too good for it. You enjoy it just as much as the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that show. You're right. Well, no, okay. No. Yes, Angela's absolutely right. The thing I like about Angela's absolutely right. I can't pretend that I don't love that stuff. The thing I like about Catfish, though, is that it's never taking advantage of people. It's never trying to make people look dumb or stupid or put them in a bad light, right? It's always giving them an opportunity to say what they feel, to apologize, to speak for themselves, and to identify themselves the way that they want to, and to be very vulnerable and be supported by a person or a group of people that they really don't know, right? And I just don't think you see a lot of that I don't think you see a lot of that in reality TV, right? But it's also, so it's this kind of, it's a show about a dark thing, but they approach it with like compassion and understanding, right? And I think that it's kind of baked in, right? Because this is something that Neve knows very like personally, right? And so he has sort of brought, right, as someone who this happened to, he has never forgotten how it feels to be on the other end of that, right? And so, I don't know, I really love seeing that, right? Because it could go so wrong, but it just never does. And there's all these wild situations. But it's also like an extremely like LGBTQ AI plus like positive show, right? All sorts of different relationships, people identifying, right? People are allowed to identify in any way that they want. They are never made to feel bad, right? We were watching an episode yesterday, and there was a man who was being catfished, and he was being very honest about like he was in communication with his catfish about the fact that he was HIV positive, right? And he wanted to meet it because he could express that to this person, and he had never been able to like, express that and to anyone else, right? And like that's a really hard thing to talk about, but like just the way Neve and Max, and now Neve and Cammy, approach and deal with these people is so compassionate and empathetic, and it's just, I don't know, it's really amazing to watch. And they figured out, the other thing is they figured out a way to do episodes remotely, which is just him and Cammy sitting at their computers, but like the way that they edit, right? So everyone's on like a Zoom call, right? But the way that they like edit the Zoom calls, right? And the way that they like, right, everyone knows what that looks like, right? Now, when you have a bunch of boxes on your screen with different videos of different people, right? The way they like move around the different Zoom windows to capture reactions, right? Or like they'll be on the Zoom window, but then Neve and Cammy are texting. And so you just see the scroll of like the iMessage in the corner as the Zoom is going on. And they just like, they figured out a way to like really capture the way that like we were all communicating now anyways, right? But like now that, or like when that in-person communication went away, how did we adapt to it? And what are those modes that we found on the internet to interact? And they capture it and display it on television in this really unique and fun way. And it doesn't feel like forced or contrived at all. It feels like a very natural extension of what the show already was. So yeah, Catfish is, I don't know, it's great. I think you would like it, Ange, because like there is that little bit of drama, but it's like always super positive. I think you would really like it. It's on Hulu. All the seasons are on Hulu, and I think season 8 or 9 just came out. I forget which one, but yeah, we're gonna watch the like movie eventually. Not for a bit, but we're gonna watch the movie, and maybe we'll have you watch some episodes. But it's really good. I really enjoy it. All right, social links, everyone. You can follow Angela on Instagram at glow.angela. You can also follow her at IJOON_. That is where she shows off some of her bullet journaling stuff. You can follow me on Twitter at Joey Glowacki. That's JoeyGlowacky. The music you heard in this episode is a lo-fi remix of the song Concerning Hobbits by Patrick Moonbird. You can find their music on Spotify and SoundCloud. Please rate and review this episode on Apple Podcasts or on your preferred podcast listening app. You can also email the show by sending your messages to podcast@comicsly.com. All reviews and messages are greatly appreciated. All episodes of the show are now on YouTube, so if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or something, but you prefer to listen to it on YouTube, you can go ahead and find it there and leave us a YouTube comment if that's the thing you want to do. And we'll see you then. Bye.